Here. Commissioner Wilson,
Present.
Commissioner Storm here, Commissioner Casey,
Present.
and Commissioner Latimer.
Present.
And I'm Alan Delwich. I'm present. Next item is approval of the minutes of the February 14th meeting.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Then let's vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. So we'll move on. There's no unfinished business, no new business, so we'll move on to other business, and it's Plan Manitou update work session.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Ethan Schaefer. If we haven't met, I'm a Planner 2 here at City of Manitou Springs. I'll be kind of kicking off the discussion about the Plan Manitou, our comprehensive plan update, in our work sessions that will be coming up. I also have our consultants that are helping us on this project who will introduce themselves. And I'm happy to say that you may recognize some of them having worked on the original comprehensive plan back in 2018. And so I will go ahead and let them introduce themselves and present what they're going to show you guys tonight.
Great. Thank you, Ethan. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We're very pleased to be with you tonight. My name is Darcy White with Clarion Associates. Clarion was the lead firm for the previous plan. So very familiar with the community. Matt Prosser with Economic and Planning Systems is also joining us tonight. He worked with me on that prior update as well. So I'll let him talk a little bit more about, they have some other things that they're working on with the city also. And then we're also joined by Andy Rutz with Crescendo Planning. And Andy is our fresh perspective, I would say, on this update. He is really going to be taking the lead on some of the community engagement pieces in the process and kind of bringing his experience there to the process. So we're excited to be getting started, and just wanted to kind of spend some time tonight talking a little bit about kind of how the process is structured. Get some initial feedback from the commission on initial plan implementation ideas, and I know you've got you had some materials in your packet that Ethan's going to talk about, and then Matt's going to kind of walk us through that in terms of getting some feedback, and then we'll talk a little bit about where we're going from here. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll go ahead and jump in. So I think one of the things that we've
Excuse me, Commissioner Casey has a question first.
yes, please.
Oh, okay, he can wait, sorry.
Okay. All right, so I think just in terms of kind of talking a little bit about how this process is going to go, I think one of the things that we talked with City Council about last month is that, you know, it's a relatively fresh plan in terms of what we see. We work with a lot of communities, you know, that haven't touched their plan in 10 years or 15 years, even more in some cases. And so because this plan was recently developed, and that really built on many, many years of engagement with the City of Manitou Springs through prior efforts, we're really viewing this, and we're asked to kind of focus on this as more of a targeted plan update. So it's not a start from scratch plan. A lot of the information in the plan is still relevant based on our initial conversation. So we're going to be working on updating some of the foundational material, the background, the trends information, just to make sure everything's current. There are quite a few related plans and studies that have been completed since this plan was adopted in 2017. And you've also got a new code. A lot of the recommendations in the implementation plan for Plan Manitou were really focused on regulatory updates. And so a lot of things were accomplished through that code update, and you'll see that in the packet that you received related to that. So part of this is just kind of a wholesale refresh in terms of trying to make sure everything is aligned. We will have opportunities for the community to just kind of check in on the vision and the goals and the policies. But, I think based on preliminary feedback that we've heard from staff and from council and the department so far, the general sentiment seems to be that by and large, those are probably in pretty good shape, but this is an opportunity to kind of check in on those. So you see the orange star there at the bottom. The real focus of this effort in terms of substantive changes to the plan is going to be on implementation. And, that's really what we want to focus on tonight, is just to get thoughts on what's been working well, what hasn't. And Ethan's going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So the goal through this process is really to try to build in a bit more of a strategic plan within the master plan, so that you guys have better guidance, council, the community has guidance about, kind of how to prioritize the many strategies that are within the plan. In terms of the overall timeline, we kicked off the process officially in January. We had some initial meetings in February, and are planning to complete the process in about a year with the transition between Hannah and now Fred. I saw Fred on the line, and we're excited to have him coming on board next month to step in to Hannah's shoes. We will be, kind of extending the timeline out, we think, by a month or two beyond what we originally had planned, just to kind of allow for some transition time. So really 3 phases to this. Phase 1 is really focused on kind of some of those technical pieces that I talked about. Then we'll be getting into the strategic priorities, kind of initial focus, and then we'll come back with a draft plan. So we will have opportunities for input from the public as well as the commission at each of those stages. And so it will move along at a fairly good clip, but I think we want to make sure we've got some time to really dig in on those key issues. And Andy's going to talk a little bit more about public engagement here shortly. So tentatively, what we're shooting for is still to have the plan ready for adoption early next year. So I'll let Andy talk a little bit more about some of those details when we get to that point. But are there any process questions that the commission has before we move into some of the implementation discussions?
I
All
think
right. Ethan, you want to jump back in?
Absolutely. So commissioners, as you're familiar with, we're going through this process and kind of the steps that we are looking at right now. And Darcy and Andy, feel free to jump in if anything is relevant as well. We are getting into the community engagement phase. I know some of you have seen the email blasts from the city regarding working groups to be had as we're getting into this. But something that we were talking, that Hannah, especially in one of her last presentations here with us to City Council, was talking about what has our 2023 progress report. And that was attached to your agenda packet as well. Highly recommend looking at that. The City Council meeting on February 20th. I also recommend watching that meeting if you want more information too. Hannah was very elegant about kind of addressing each of the things that we were going through. But some highlights from that meeting that I wanted to pull out for you all. So there were 103 priority action items within the 2018 plan. And per Hannah, 57 of those action items have already been completed in the immediate term. 27 are ongoing efforts and 19 are incomplete. And per Hannah as well, I just want to shout her out. That is amazing for a city our size. There was a lot in that plan, a lot of wants, a lot of wishes, a lot of priorities, and the city is chugging along on them. So that's something that's really exciting. And with Hannah's experience, she reflected on that being quite an amazing feat being done by this community, by the city and this community. As far as long-term action items, which are about a 10 to 20 year horizon, 28 of the long-term action items have been complete and 21 are underway. So that's also another really amazing feat for the city and this community. And I just want to reemphasize, as Hannah said in that meeting, highly recommend watching it. We are ahead of schedule. And this is why this plan update is crucial as we start kind of honing in on the numerous things that are part of that progress report, the numerous items. This update can help us hone in on those and what are our next steps forward. Anything to add, Darcy or Andy?
No, that's a great summary, Ethan. Maybe I'll turn it over to Matt and we can kind of dig in a little bit on some of the broader questions.
Yeah, thanks, Darcy. So it's good to be with you all. Again, I'm Matt Prosser. I'm a principal with Economic and Planning Systems. As Darcy mentioned, I worked with her and Clarion on the previous plan, and excited to be back here again. My firm is also working on a project with the city around consolidation, perhaps, or modification of some of your existing special districts to better provide services. And so we've been working through a process with other staff members to identify opportunities for the community. And I'm not exactly sure how involved this body has been in that project yet, but we'll definitely be aligning those efforts as needed throughout the process. So I'm going to try to prompt and facilitate a discussion around how you all have used the plan and how you have felt the implementation of this plan has gone. As Ethan and Hannah have shared, you all have done a ton. And so a lot of those action items that have been identified have been implemented, but the master plan is meant to be a document to be used for several purposes, and definitely in your day-to-day or week-to-week sort of use in terms of evaluating different projects that might come in front of you all. And so we'd love to kind of get into discussing how you use the plan, how you felt implementation has gone, and what we may need to consider changing or building upon in this update, which, as Darcy mentioned, will be more around creating a new implementation strategy since you all have accomplished so much to date. So we have a few questions, I think, on the next slide to prompt some discussion, or maybe we don't anymore. Either way, I'll just ask the question. So I'm wondering from your all's perspective, how have you found using the plan? How has that gone? And specific to how have you felt the implementation of the plan has gone over the last 5-6 years since it's been adopted?
Would anybody like to start here? Okay. Yeah, I've had mixed feelings about it. It's been good in some ways. I think one criticism I've heard on occasion is that it's so broad. You can find a goal or a statement to do almost anything that there's a feeling I've heard that we need more specifics. And one thing that I know happened, and I'm not sure because I was involved a little bit when we did the plan, but it seems like some of the characterization of different neighborhoods got miscast. Like, the example that comes up was the neighborhood on Beckers in El Paso was sort of highlighted in the plan as almost like a commercial corridor and a gateway area. And in reality, once we started trying to implement based on that notion, the specific neighborhood said, wait, we're residential, what's all this commercial stuff being characterized in our neighborhood? And so what I think what happened was somehow we didn't get enough feedback from the stakeholders in those specific areas. And And it sort of reduce, I think, the reason is that with plans like this, it's really hard to get that real good community engagement. And, somehow, people end up, there's a burnout factor. There's so many different initiatives. There's the library, the park, the transportation, cycling, on and on and on. And so somehow we need to make sure that we don't do that again. We really get that buy-in from the different elements of the community. So that's, to me, that's been my experience and what I've seen. Anybody else have anything? Mike, you had some questions.
Just taking a quick poll, my thoughts on, this project is, it's nice to have and it's a resource, but the land use development code is our Bible. That's the nuts and bolts. That's where I go to before every meeting. It's a resource, but it's, I think from our point of view, we reference it every now and then, but it's not really, yeah. So, just that was kind of for you, Matt, just so you know.
Yeah.
That, it really doesn't, it's a reference, I guess. It doesn't impact the planning commission's day-to-day operation. So, again, it's nice to have, but we're probably not going to have a tremendous amount of input for you because you don't use it that often.
Yeah. We heard from council sort of that same comment that there are a lot of great values and goals in the plan, but you can find support for a lot of things, and sort of the lacking of what is the priority, and how you sort of weigh different competing perhaps initiatives against each other, or goals against each other is hard to do. And so I think that's definitely something that we can address through this process, is to really figure out what priorities are, and so that it can be more of a guide to your decision making going forward. Any other comments or thoughts about the plan currently, or what you would like the plan to be able to support you with going forward once a new plan is put in place?
David?
I may be out of sequence here. I've certainly been encouraged and supported the plan as it's gone through various iterations. The summary that we were provided for this meeting seemed thin to me, and I think maybe that's because a number of items are listed as completed, but overall, there are no metrics, as far as I can tell, about how well the goal was accomplished. The two that jump out at me are affordable housing and traffic congestion. They've only gotten significantly worse. And I don't know how, or if it's even possible to build that into the plan in the future, but saying, yes, we completed these large number of actions, Ethan, in the end, doesn't cut it for me.
Yeah, I think that's a really insightful comment. I appreciate it. It's one thing to sort of have an action item list to do, but we need to know what impact they're having on the community. And so I think that's definitely something we can try to address to kind of understand how implementation directly leads to tangible outcomes for the community. And those two specific issues I think are great to hear about. And I think there are definitely measures we can consider for how we can track that over time.
And I think that ties into with the work that we're doing on updates to the trends. For example, housing specifically, we had a lot of detail in that community profile. And so being able to look back and see as you said, yes, we've accomplished some specific things, but has the dynamic changed so radically that we now have a whole new list? And so that's part of the process we need to go through. So I really appreciate that feedback as well. And that's something in terms of trying to frame those accomplishments. Certainly when we get into the broader community discussions, we can definitely focus on that. That's helpful. Could I ask a follow-up question about the comment earlier? We talked a little bit about this at council, but the characterization of just the broad nature of the plan, and the plan it's a 10 to 20 year plan, covers everything under the sun essentially in terms of kind of what quality of life is in Manitou. And I think so one of the questions I would have for you guys is just thinking about, you mentioned in terms of having more specificity. Matt mentioned, kind of really digging in on the implementation strategies and helping prioritize things that way. But do you feel that the policy direction in the plan needs to be more specific? Because it is very, it's much more specific than we would find in a lot of communities, I guess, in terms of level of detail. So it'd be helpful just to kind of hear your thoughts on, thinking about maybe situations where you guys have had a request to review something against the plan. What were you struggling with? I mean, it doesn't have to be a specific example, but just to give us some guidance on, is it the actual goal language, or is it really more just kind of the prioritization of the actual strategies that has been a little bit of a struggle?
The one thing I can think is that it may be that we need some help in how to use it. Like, just if I think back over the last 5 years, where in our planning commission process, if we have a particular land use request, there will be a section that says, oh yeah, these elements of Plan Manitou support this action. And they're just kind of all over the map, very random, it could be someone wants to put in a coffee, drive-through coffee thing, and it'll hit economic development and all kinds of different things. It's just very random. And I'm not sure how we, if there'd be a better way or somehow to have the plan be more focused in the context of what we do. I don't know if that makes sense. It's just like, it's just sort of like sprinkle in some stuff from arts and culture and a few things from historic neighborhoods but nothing, it's not like big picture. I don't know. It's just sort of like, oh yeah, here's some that cover it.
Yeah, and so what you're getting in terms of applications and staff reports are really just sort of statements from the comp plan that are somewhat associated, as opposed to some actual sort of analysis or assessment of how the plan is, or how the action you're looking at either implements or doesn't implement the vision. Was that a good summation?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in and reflect on this and just think Commissioner Armstrong and Delwich as well, regarding kind of, there were some similar crossovers. I think that's something that, especially as Fred, our new planning director, is coming on, and as we're looking at processes and steps that staff is taking to analyze applications and also engage with you in those applications. Just from a little bit of prior experience in other planning department, I think us looking at, yes, we're looking at the land use and development code in this space, and that's what we're typically assessing in this space and having many, many conversations about. But overall, just like Matt was saying, how is this project or how is this proposal meeting the requirements of the land use development code and supporting the overall goals and mission of the city and the vision? I think that it's the land use development code is influenced by the overall comprehensive plan. So how are we engaging in those conversations and those analyses and looking at the big picture and coming down to the specifics that are called out in the land use development code? So I just wanted to reflect on that and thank both of you and the commission as a whole. That's something that we'll definitely continue to look at, especially as Fred comes on and we look at what we're doing and how we're moving forward.
Anything else?
I guess one other way to sort of ask for some input is sort of, are there tools or direction that would be more help or would be helpful for you all as you consider different projects? Are there things that you wish you had some guidance or direction on to help better inform your decisions?
You know, I can't really pinpoint anything. As I think about it, as we discussed it, I think a lot of the higher level essence of this plan will be more directed towards council, because, you know, they set the policy. And we pretty much are implementers of what the direction we get. Like, you know, our direction is a land use code, period.
So one other, I guess, big picture question, recognizing what you just articulated, but I guess stepping back from, you know, kind of the role as implementers and thinking about it more as community members who are engaged. Do you think that the overall vision, the goals broadly are still valid in your mind? Are there any that, you know, do you feel like the plan is sort of off track in any way in terms of the big picture guidance that it's providing, that we should be looking at?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think one of the tensions we have in the community that we've had forever is the balance between tourism and economic development and neighborhoods. And I think that's one that it's somehow we have to balance those things. And we, you know, and as you do community engagement, you'll see that our community's all over the map. But there, you know, our latest community survey, if you've looked at that, there's a pretty significant portion of the population that feels like we spend an inordinate time on tourism development and instead of neighborhood quality of life issues. And it's not across the board, and it depends on where you live. If you're on the east side, you're much less sensitive to tourism. If you're on the west side, you know, you can't move. You can't take your car out on a weekend in the summer period, because you'll never be able to get back to your house. And so there's stuff like that, that if you look at the current plan, you know, and if you just read the economic development section or tourism, it's like, yeah, let's do more. Well, how can we engage? How can we get more? You talk to other elements of the community and they'll say, do we need more? Maybe we need less. So those things, I guess, you know, we could, you know, maybe refine the plan so it's a good balance of those sentiments. And again, engaging the community, because people tend to be reactive, you know, rather than come up and, you know, with the vision. It's more like, oh, wait, you know, a year later, like, why did you say that? That's not what we want. We want this other thing. So to me, the key is how are we going to get people really to buy into it?
Nice.
Any other sort of issues similar to that from your sort of your residents or sort of stakeholder perspective in terms of how the plan doesn't necessarily align with the vision for Manitou that you have or the community has?
Could you repeat that? I couldn't quite hear that.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, any other comments along that vein? In terms of some misalignment with what's in the plan now in terms of vision and goals and what you think that really the vision is for the community.
I hope this might answer your question, but Darcy, I remember when you and your team were putting this together, and you were saying that it was a living document and it's designed to change and grow. So, and it's great that you're up, following up and making sure things are actually being accomplished. But this was implemented in April 2017, correct? That's what I saw on your screen.
That's when it was adopted, correct?
Okay, but so great. But a lot of things have changed in the city since then. For example, two major purchases by the city, and it would be great to put those on the list just to keep the pressure and keep things moving and accountability. So other than making sure the previous items have been accomplished, are we going to add more to keep it fresh and alive?
Yes.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to check in on all those things. I think, as we go forward, I think people are going to start realizing, oh, well, there's also this, that's why we want to check in generally and make sure that the plan is still working, but also refresh anything that needs to, based on change in direction you want to go or new information. So, yes, to all of those things.
Okay, good, thanks. And then are we going to go through the list that was provided to us, or is that just FYI?
We can go through the list if you guys would like to. I can pull that up. It's going to be up to you all, just depending on what your preference is. The list of goals, correct? The progress report?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. But I'm okay with that if you want to do that.
Well, I just had a couple questions specific to that list, and then there's a bunch of typos. I can show you those later too.
Absolutely, yes. This was something that Hannah had written before she left, so I'm happy to take those questions and get info for you if I don't have it available.
Blame it on the person that
Oh.
left.
Yes, so no, I'm happy to get those, and I can get typos now, or feel free to email me any as well, and we can get that document updated as well.
Well, I don't want to waste everyone's time, but I do have more important questions other than typos, just FYI.
Absolutely, thank you.
Yeah, well, I think, Mike, if you have specifics, maybe just jump in and that'll get us going.
Just two, I think. Right off the bat, FA 1-2, develop a defensible space along the south side of the city. It's ongoing. What's ongoing?
So it looks like that this is related more towards fire preparedness and mitigation. It's as fire is assigned as lead. So I'm assuming right now it's more so that mitigation work being done for fire preparedness and making and trying to prevent future fire and damage. I can absolutely follow up to you in an email as well with what is going on currently for that goal.
Well, that's probably a good example of what David was saying is just
Context.
right. I mean, ongoing. How do you even comment?
Yeah.
And I didn't really expect to have a detailed answer, but it would be nice to know that that's a big deal, and we're just wondering what's going on.
And we actually, before we met with council a few weeks ago, we sat down with the departments to talk about some of these questions. So that was one of the specific things we talked about just to get clarification. And so those are the types of, that's the type of information as we go through and update just the trends and the existing conditions that we'll be able to have more discussion about moving forward. So I think this isn't necessarily meant to be a comprehensive document, but really kind of a snapshot of, kind of where things stand. And as we go through the process, we'll be vetting some of these and trying to get more detail and understand, all right, if it's ongoing, is it something that we need to elevate? Are there outstanding pieces that are particularly important? So that's some of the color that we can add based on the conversations we're having with the folks who are deep in the weeds on this kind of stuff. In this case, literally in the weeds. So
Okay,
I think to that point, maybe just take a note that ongoing isn't a response in that box. Because ongoing really doesn't mean anything. If you want to maybe just make a goal to have 5 points that there being actions that are being pursued or something that's actually adds meat to that box, ongoing's not an answer. Thanks.
Thank you.
just one other comment real quick on FA 4.8. It talks about the plaques that are displayed around the historic buildings, which are great things, but some of them are falling apart. So instead of complete, there should be some maintenance on that one. And then I didn't see the Click It and Fix It program on here. I think that's a great feather in the city's cap. Click it, fix it, whatever. That I just think that should be. You might want to put it on here just to keep that. It's a great thing. So, but other than the typos, that's all I have.
Thank you. And if you could send those my way whenever you're ready to do that, that'd be awesome. Any typos? Perfect.
Anything else? Anybody? I'll just make one general comment. I think the sections on transportation and mobility, a lot has changed in the last 7 years. We have an enterprise now for parking and transportation. We're doing a lot with other forms of mobility besides cars. Things have really moved fast in that realm. We've even acquired another location for parking, and it's kind of like in its infancy. And there are a lot of people who say, well, how are we going to shape that, and what input will the community have, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, transportation is a big area, I think, for focus, and you'll get a lot of participation there, I think.
And you also have a new plan since Plan Manitou was adopted that's focused specifically on mobility. So I think one of the things we talked about with the departments was just, how to kind of recalibrate this plan to support that effort and make sure we've got the right information in the right places. But we definitely heard feedback that parking and traffic were ongoing sticking points in the community for sure.
It looks like we're talked out here for now.
Okay, why don't we'll shift gears and I'll share my screen again, Andy, and let you jump in on outreach, since I think we'll have some good conversation there.
That sounds great. And I'll echo Darcy and Matt's. Thanks for letting us squeeze onto the agenda tonight. I'm Andy Rutz with Crescendo Planning and Design. As Darcy mentioned, I'll be helping support the team on the planning and engagement side of things. And I think, the commissioners noted the need for the engagement component of this to be really robust, and to try to strike that balance of not like fatiguing a community that's already pretty engaged in a lot of other efforts. So our starting point in terms of mapping out how best to engage the community is to put together what we call a public engagement plan. We have one right now in draft form, but it's intentionally in draft form because we want opportunities like we have tonight for City Council and then you all as Planning Commission and our working group members, which I'll mention in a minute, to help us better refine that and make sure that we're hitting the mark to engage folks in Manitou the way that they prefer to be engaged. And we've got, the great benefit in this case that the city has a really robust kind of citywide public engagement plan that's been completed since the adoption of Plan Manitou. So we're really building on the foundation of kind of tools and techniques that have been outlined in that plan, also some lessons learned from the folks at Clarion and EPS who were on the team for the original Plan Manitou process. And we're going to be working on finalizing that based on all these touch points that we have. We wanted to touch then really quickly, Darcy had kind of talked about overall project schedule. And in an effort to, not wear the community out with engaging in this process, we tend to try to consolidate these more sort of intense windows of input. There will be, forms of input throughout the duration of this effort, a lot of like online opportunities and kind of pop-up events that I'll mention in a minute, but we really try to align sort of a big consolidated push with each of the phases of this project. And so the first of those, you see noted on the right, initial project discovery. We're targeting April for that, and that'll be really our first opportunity to engage the working groups in earnest. And that part of the phase, I think, is probably pretty self-explanatory, but it's our opportunity to really listen and get nuanced insight from folks in the neighborhoods and in the communities about what, from their perspective, has been working or not working with Plan Manitou. Maybe echoes some of the things we've heard tonight about prioritization or changing needs on that, like transportation mobility side of things. And that's where we start to marry that with the more technical analysis of things that have been accomplished or are in process. The second phase then is really to try to have a conversation with the community at large about what should the priorities be moving forward for the next 10, 15 years. So a little bit of reflection probably on successes in the last 7, but really trying to kind of hone down on the wish list, what's still left to do, maybe what's added to it since that time, and start to tease out what are the priorities in the short, kind of medium and long term. And then once we have a chance to package that into a draft plan, we come back out again, try to engage the community at large, re-engage the working groups rather, and make sure that that's reflective of the input that we've gotten thus far. And so there's still opportunity in that October engagement round to certainly shape the plan or add things to it. But hopefully at that point in the process, we've got enough kind of meat in the document that folks have a really tangible thing to respond to. I wanted to talk then a little bit about the kind of types of engagement that we're intending to pursue. So we try to do a mix of kind of traditional opportunities for folks to gather in bigger groups. That's kind of in the community meetings and workshops side of things, more really like hands-on activities, knowing that those are kind of a moment in time event. It doesn't work with everybody's schedule. We're trying to supplement that with these working group meetings, which Ethan's going to elaborate on in a little bit, but essentially kind of smaller focused groups of folks interested in a kind of a specific topic or a specific theme nested within the plan, where we can have a kind of a more detailed technical conversation with them. We'll be doing updates like this to you all and City Council. And then, knowing that in-person meetings don't work for everybody, we're trying to also create opportunities to engage online with surveys, trying to allow folks to kind of engage more passively or on their own time, maybe in smaller bursts. And then one of the best tools that I think is just kind of tried and true at this point, especially in a community like Manitou where you've got a lot of great events, especially over the summer, is just find opportunities for our team to piggyback on those events. And so rather than asking folks to set time in their schedule to engage in this process, we just can kind of drop in and meet them where they are already. A little bit more information about the working groups, and I know the chairman was able to join during that city council session and had a lot of really good feedback that we've kind of already started to incorporate into our process. The working groups, as I mentioned, are going to be smaller groups, ideally like 4 to 8 people in each group. The way that they support this process is, as I mentioned, they're able to give us perspective on a lot of the priorities and kind of issues and opportunities that are mapped out to everybody's point tonight, maybe a little more broadly in Plan Manitou, and they help allow us to get more specific about those. The other role that I think is probably not mentioned a lot, but is really critical, is they're a really great sort of ambassador to the community, to their neighbors, to constituents they may have, to get them engaged in the plan as well, to reflect their voice into the process, and then to become kind of long-term champions for implementing the plan. It's important to mention this group it's intended to be advisory. They won't be making any final decisions. All the input that we get from them, we will be reporting back to Planning Commission and City Council. So they're almost like a first cut, if you will, at some of the content, and they're committing to spending a little bit more time with our team throughout the process. And so their recommendations aren't formal. They don't have the power to veto things, but they can, with a fairly strong voice, share their opinion, and we'll absolutely reflect that back to you all. In terms of the sort of themes then that we organize those in, and this is a change from what we were showing to City Council. I think our initial impression was to organize them loosely by the sort of plan elements that you find within Plan Manitou. And I think it was actually the chairman who suggested this. Like, it's an opportunity for us to kind of intentionally cross-pollinate a little bit some of these kind of areas of interest or expertise. And so we took that list and kind of collapsed it down to 6 working groups, which I think will give us a really like manageable size to have those smaller format conversations. And we paired some of them that have, I think, sort of intuitive overlap together. So you'll see here arts and culture would go along with historic and cultural resources. Economic development and tourism has a standalone working group. Housing and neighborhoods, along with land use and built environment, natural environment and sustainability, infrastructure and public services, along with transportation and mobility, which I think reflects that like pretty dramatic change in those topics in the last 7 years, and then education and health and human services. And another aspect of that is we'll meet with each of those 6 groups individually in that first project discovery phase. But then the intent would be to meet with all of those groups sort of in a larger group format to even like further promote this idea of cross-pollination. And I think, you know, tonight we heard even maybe the 2 sides of opinions or 2 sides of the spectrum on economic development, tourism, and housing and neighborhoods. And so it'll allow us the opportunity to have a detailed conversation with each of those groups, but then also allow those groups to hear from each other in that sort of larger format discussion. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ethan because I think he was going to report out a little bit on like how these groups are being formed and what's been going on basically since the few weeks that we met with City Council.
Absolutely. So since last time that our consultants got to meet with City Council, one of the bigger things that was brought up was an ask to have an application out to the community for those that would be interested to participate in these working groups. It was a short application asking for some identifying information, whether you live here, whether you own and operate a business here, and then what areas of interest you have. And it encompassed everything that you see on this screen. We have collected those applications now and we'll be going to City Council this next Tuesday with those. And we'll be presenting those to City Council, hearing feedback and wants and wishes on having people participate and appointed to those different working groups based off of interest areas, so that just like our consultants were talking about here, we can continue that process of community engagement and start off on a small scale and get it to a bigger scale of cross-pollination. And so that's just kind of the update I have for you right now on those. Yes, Carrie?
How many applications did you get? I'm just curious.
Yes, we had 27 applications. Any other questions for myself or the consultants regarding this?
Okay, I know we had the cutoff date was the 10th, but I'm not sure how much that got broadcast out to the community. Is there any opportunity for people to still get in the game? You know,
Totally.
27, that's like 4 people per committee. That's, you know, it seems like there's still room for
Yeah.
expansion.
So we're having conversations about this. We were just talking this afternoon as well too. For the first engagement session, which is scheduled for April 8th, that's why we had that cutoff right now, so that City Council has the ability to hear this again before that, and so we can begin moving forward with council. So for right now, for the April 8th session, that is where we're at, but we are having active conversations around how we can better support this as well.
Anything else? Okay. No more questions here.
So I think the only thing we had left.
I think we do have one hand online.
Oh, I'm
Well,
sorry.
It looked like.
Okay, Gloria.
Hello, everyone. This is Gloria Latimer. Ethan, just a question related to what Alan brought up. Does that mean these are closed meetings, so members of the community couldn't drop into one of these meetings?
For right now, we are closing them just so that we're prepared for the engagement part of it. It's kind of like that round table situation of having kind of limited time to get through information. And so that's why we had to structure it this way as well, to be intentional about our engagement at the moment. However, like Andy was talking about, we are trying to have these other opportunities for those who can't make it, for instance, to the first session, have other opportunities to engage with this process as well.
Okay. Can I address a question to Andy at this time, or would you like to have that later?
No, this is fine. Go ahead.
Hey, Andy, I was wondering about the online surveys. Are those directed within chunks like these working groups are, or when you do, how do you do the online? Because I'm concerned about them being so lengthy that people will look at it and say, oh man, that's going to take me 20 minutes. I'm not going to do that. But how do you go about getting online input?
That's a really great question, and I think it kind of varies, honestly, community to community. I think you're right. The sentiment of this survey is too long, I'm not going to spend the time on it, sort of defeats the purpose. So one way we have gotten around that is almost like a choose your own adventure at the start of, hey, if you have a particular area of interest, select that first, and it basically like branches you to a set of questions around that area of interest. That way we can keep it to a more manageable chunk of time. And then when you complete that, you're offered the opportunity to re-engage about maybe another area of interest. I think the likelihood is we'll have to vary the kind of style of those a little bit throughout the process, just to try to like give varying attention spans the opportunity to weigh in. But if you have suggestions of what you've seen as a success already, we will absolutely take those.
Okay. Well, I don't have that so much, but perhaps if it's going to get to be several minutes long, the opportunity to back out and come back in without losing the data you've already put in would be good. And I also think we have a number of great community events through the summer and early fall that residents, if you had a booth someplace, an ability to interact with people, you might get a lot more input that way as well. If you had the computer set up and they could do it online quick and easy.
That's great. No, that's a great suggestion.
And we
Thank you.
actually, one of the online tools we used in the earlier process that was super helpful. We did some questions of the week that were just topic based. So we had maybe a couple things we really just wanted to get more feedback on related to housing or transportation. And I think we did them over, I can't remember how many weeks, but 5 or 6, maybe more. And we were getting 50 to 60 responses on each of those. And so I think, as Andy said, we'll try a lot of different methods, but I think sometimes it can be, something short and sweet can really give us a lot of insight into some of those specific questions.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess it's back to you, Darcy. You were.
All right. Well, I think the only thing left was next steps. And I think Ethan actually touched on that a little bit. So we will be spending a full day essentially on April 8th doing our initial round of working group meetings. We have a a flyer put together for them. They're going to have some homework to do to prepare for those meetings. So they'll be asked to review the individual sections of the plan based on the group that they are assigned to, and then kind of get their heads into this. So as Andy said, you know, one of the distinctions for this group is, you know, they are signing up to spend more time than most folks might be willing to through this process. So we are going to be relying on them to kind of do a little bit more heavy lifting in terms of kind of review. So we will be facilitating those meetings on the 8th. In the meantime, we are already working on updates to the trends and background information. One of the changes that we're kind of working through in this update is that the technology we have now is just a lot better than it was even 7 years ago. And so, for example, the community profile, which has the population information, a lot of the data that really informs the plan is tucked into the appendix, as you're aware now, which most people probably aren't going to make it to the appendix. So we also have a really robust package of maps, but they're static maps. And so we have new tools now where we're moving all of that information into what's called a story map form. And so you'll be able to the public or you guys will be able to interact with the maps and the information and kind of see how those things fit together in a more meaningful way. And so our hope is that it's more accessible for folks, but also easier to maintain over time. So that's kind of what we're working on in the background. And then we're also starting to get into just kind of looking at what we're calling the policy scan, which is we do have some new plans. We've talked about transportation. The codes happened, and then also the hazard mitigation plan has been updated. And so, you know, there's some degree of just sort of understanding some of the technical aspects that will need to change within the plan. But I think the high level feedback that you all have provided, as well as council, I think will help us kind of frame some of those opportunities to kind of think about how to make this plan more user friendly and more useful for your day to day moving forward. So we appreciate the time, and we're happy to answer more questions, but that's where we are right now.
Great, thank you. Anything else? David?
I want to say that state the obvious. It's human nature to focus on things that you don't like and you want to change. And I know a number of you, or have the strong impression a number of you have been involved with Manitou in the past. I am much encouraged by the obvious level of your expertise and engagement. It's clear you know what you're doing, and that benefits us, of course. I think Manitou is probably not the easiest community to work with, but we're definitely the best. So
we're excited to be working with you again. I think one of the things that was very clear when we started the prior process was that, I remember staff just really emphasizing just how engaged the community was and kind of wanting to be involved. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why the implementation section ended up being so robust, is because each group really wanted to make sure that their projects and their ideas, and staff was really committed to doing that, were kind of embedded in the plan. And so I think that was very much a reflection of everyone having a lot of ideas, a lot of great ideas, and wanting to make the community a better place. So we appreciate that about Manitou, and we're really excited to continue this conversation with you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any more, or are we?
No, that will conclude staff's portions today. And I'll hand it back off to you, Chair Delwich.
Okay, great, thank you. Anything else? Any other items? If not, I think then we can adjourn.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.